Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today on Game Geeks, we're going to be talking about the Leagues of Gothic Horror for the Ubiquity system by Triple Ace Games. Sorry about that, got a cold. All right, so today we're going to be talking about Leagues of Horror, which is partially why we're doing this weird half-lighting thing. I thought it would look more like a Hammer film. So with the Leagues of Gothic Horror, this is for Ubiquity, which is part of their Leagues of Adventure line, which was the Ubiquity powered, more about that in just a sec. It is a game of Victorian steampunky action. So essentially you can live out the action dreams that you have of the Victorian setting, like fighting someone on the hands of Big Ben or globetrotting around the world to discover things, etc. The Leagues of Gothic Horror brings in a horror aspect, but I need to point out this is not a Cthulhuoid horror. This is something that Wiggy's working on right now. This is your traditional Gothic horror. Essentially, it's anything that Hammer would have made between the 1950s and the 1970s. So, which is one of my favorite film eras for that stuff anyway. I love the Hammer films. So what you get here is this takes the adventure aspect of the Leagues of Adventure and puts it squarely into the realms of crumbling castles, creepy fog, screechy gypsy violin music, etc. So what it does is it expands on that through new rules and new setups for the game. For instance, you get new archetypes which you can play with. One of the things I like about the Ubiquity games, at least from Hollow Earth Expedition on into the material produced by Triple Ace Games, is there's plenty of pre-made characters for you to either use, crib from, or just steal the concept and make your own numbers. Either of those approaches, any of those approaches work. The pre-generated characters they give you in here range everything from the Ghostly Musketeer, which is my personal favorite, which harkens back to All for One, which we reviewed previously, which is their Musketeer action game, also powered by Ubiquity. You have an alienist, you have a natural empath, pretty much anything you'd expect from that era of horror storytelling. Now, expanding outward from there, you have new leagues, which are organizations that your character can belong to. Belonging to an organization gives you bonuses depending on where your rank in that organization is. New weird science stuff, because it's not a steampunk-enabled game without some weird science in it. So the weird science stuff we've got going on here is pretty much what you'd expect. My personal favorites are the gas-powered automatic crossbow, and if that doesn't give you ideas about what you can do with that, I think you're not paying attention. And my other one is the etheric typewriter. Just the idea of that, I see these legions of ghostly civil servants, like something out of Beetlejuice, is typing away on something. It introduces a horror and sanity mechanic, which you need for this. It's not a Cthulhu sanity mechanic. It's more, Then it gives you 53 pages of critters and NPCs for you to deal with. Everything from Dracula to Frankenstein's monster, which you'd expect, to the corpse of a 16th century serial killer, Rasputin, Varney the Vampire, anything from that Gothic horror era of literature. One of the things that I've always loved about Triple Ace Games and Wiggy's writing is he knows how to do his research. He knows how to dig around and find the appropriate characters and information to make these sorts of games fun. For example, the animated corpse of the 16th century serial killer I was telling you about is named Peter Stump. I had to go and do some digging research myself to find information on Peter Stump. That's part of the reason that I love this book, is it gives you sort of a Wikipedia safari on characters from the characters of Gothic horror that you can go and look at and go, ooh, cool. So it also gives you ideas on cults, dark and creepy locales, everything from Transylvania to New Orleans to my personal favorite, the Flying Dutchman. Leagues of Gothic Horror by Triple Ace Games adds a nice level of the horrific and the scary to Leagues of Adventure, although you could easily put any of this stuff into any of the other Ubiquity games. I think it'd be weird slotting into Hollow Earth Expedition, but you could change the tone or tenor of your All for One game easily and attach this into it, and it'd still be pretty fun. A little out of era, but you can work with that. A good example for how some of this could work would be if any of you have seen the film The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Now, I know as I say this, a lot of you are going, I liked the film. I haven't read the comics, so I don't know much about them. It's dumb, it's hokey, it's everything I look for in a movie that would make great gaming. You could slot this in there perfectly and make the Leagues of Gothic Horror and the Leagues of Adventure into your own League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because there's a significant amount of literary characters in here. It would not be very hard to make Quatermain. You'd make Mina as a vampire. You would, I know, spoiler alert. You could find a way to slot in Dorian Gray in his picture. Easily done. This is a really fun book. If you're interested in the genre, there's an extremely good section on how to run Gothic horror and how it's different from, say, splatterpunk and Lovecraftian type horror. Also, if you enjoy the era and you like your Ubiquity games, this is pretty much a can't miss book, especially if you want to introduce the creepy, or at least the sort of filmatic and literary creepy of that era. Have fun gaming, everyone.